We do better. Please join me in welcoming to the stage, please, Jackie Hernandez, one of the founding members of Plug and Play Tech Center, and Christine Rope from Ethan Partners, Executive Search for the Tech Industry, Monica Pal, the CEO of 4IQ, a threat intelligence company in Silicon Valley with roots out of Madrid, Megumi Ikeda, Managing Director for Hearst Ventures, and Elena Herrero, the President of HP in Spain. Thanks, guys.
Congratulations to South Summit. It's really inspiring when you get in here. There's such an energy and such a good spirit. I mean, you know, you come from always corporations, you come from HP, and you come here, and honestly, it's something. It's great. I mean, this is what gives the future. Now, it's technology. It's technology. It always happens. No problem. I'm something doing wrong. So where do I talk? Here or here? Here. Better. Yeah. So fantastic. Let's go to, short of time, as always, as I know, let's talk about the topic of this next half an hour is going to be diversity in tech and how do we do better. Let's try to put it a little bit in context, and I'll try to present the panel first. But I mean, when we talk about diversity, we're just talking about diversity is a very big word, and diversity means a lot of things. And fosters, of course, I think there is an issue in technology, as always, and it means it fosters innovation, creativity. So probably when we talk about entrepreneur, when we talk about innovation, if you don't talk about diversity that fosters creativity, I think we're missing a lot of things. And for that, I have the pleasure, to introduce this and moderate this panel of, let's put it this way, a very diverse in all aspects, in terms of backgrounds and in terms of what it means to innovation. So I'll start by Jackie Hernandez, is Senior VP of Operations and founder of Plug and Play Tech Center. Is the largest global accelerator and one of the most active investors in Silicon Valley. In fact, invested in a lot of companies, more than 700 high-tech startups like PayPal, Lending Club, or Dropbox, for example. I know she has a major in chemistry, like I have, so I didn't realize we can work in technology being a chemist.
Despite chemistry.
Despite. Well, perhaps very well needed because you have a secret formula, no? And of course, she's also very, sharing experience in different areas about education, about entrepreneurs, about how women can really make and help in the entrepreneur world. Then we have Christine Roop. Yeah. She's the founder and CEO of Ethan Partners, okay? And really looking and searching for what I think is the most important topic is talent. Talent in terms of helping startups, helping companies. I know that you've helped Uber, Naspers, a lot of them. And also, I know you hold a master in marketing and business communication for Copenhagen. And before that, you were working also at Rocket Internet, no? That's it. Again, I think it's the other side of the two T's. I believe the world is transformation, two T's, technology and talent. I think that is key topics, key formula, as we were talking. Monica Pal, she is CEO of 4IQ. She's the Chief Executive Officer. The company that looks for security issues. What a big topic today. What a big topic today. Security. I mean, issues in the deep, dark web. I love that. I mean, it gives you some mysterious. And you're also a member of the board, no? I know you have a big experience, more than 30 years in technology and leadership roles, and I think I mean your point of view, that entrepreneur, I think is going to give us a lot of lightning. You also hold an MBA and studies in computer science and in different universities in the US. Megumi Ikeda is Managing Director for Hearst Ventures. She's the Managing Director, but you're also the General Manager for Hearst Ventures in Europe, which honestly, it's nearby, let's put it this way. So you oversee a lot of investments and from inorganic and organic acquisitions. And I know you've worked interesting, resonate to me about worked also of mergers and acquisitions for NBC Universal. So it's all the content world that I think is so important, and also worked with Wired, this famous Silicon, and you also hold a degree in Columbia University and MBA at UCLA. I mean, let's start. I mean, I think let's talk about the topic of diversity. We're just talking about that topic before. What's your view? What can diversity in the world, both entrepreneurship and innovation, bring day to day? Whoever wants to start, give it a try. And what is the main barriers you find today why diversity still has a lot to do?
Well, let me give it a try, and thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to share the stage with so brilliant ladies here. Thank you. I guess that the one of the part that I think we have to just start with the premise that diversity refers to everything. It has to be gender, it has to be creed, it has to be preferences, etc. So sadly, of course, in the month of August, we had kind of like the Demore affair and the Google memo that brought a lot of the attention to gender. And so, but we, if it wasn't for Susan Wojcicki, for example, from YouTube, that she said, if instead of saying the manifesto about the women physiological or biological differences, it would have placed a different word like African American, or it would have placed an LGBTQ, it would have replaced the word woman by any of those, it would have been a huge issue, and the angle would have been completely different. It would have been brought to court. And so we have to just focus that it is not only about women. It's not only about the gender equality, it's more about understanding that it is the inclusivity and the understanding of individuals and recognizing the strengths of individuals as well.
I think diversity has a negative spin right now in the press, right, because of these stories, but actually you need a diversity of ideas, and you need a diversity of opinions, and a diverse debate, and an honest one, as opposed to a politically correct one, in order for interesting companies to be built, and in order for ideas to be stronger. Groupthink creates a very brittle company, and a very non-resistant business.
Yeah, I think I definitely want to make sure we expand the word diversity to include, all differences. And to be honest, I think it's really about human beings and uniqueness. Each one of us is unique. It just so happens that if we share common backgrounds, common languages, common culture, then we tend to have common ways of thinking. We tend to have the same box that we operate out of. I think the opportunity is by welcoming diversity, welcoming different approaches of viewing the world. That really is where innovation comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I definitely agree. One thing to add, what is quite interesting, is in terms of when people are hiring, so when a founder is putting together their team or someone's hired in as a CEO, we often see when they start off with who they want to hire, they always encourage diversity and they're open to lots of different profiles with different backgrounds, different nationalities. But what we do see is a tendency for people to hire candidates that are very similar to themselves. They'll hire someone who has the same ideas, very similar background, and I think that's also why a lot of the teams, they become very, very similar, and not as diverse as I'm sure a lot of people would like to have or start out with intending to have. But yeah, they often look very similar when you look at the management teams. So that's definitely one thing, embracing the differences and also realizing the value that can be added through diversity.
Yeah, and one thing that you realize, I don't know if you agree, that's, I mean, this is not only a nice thing to have, it's a business issue. I mean, you know, it affects everywhere. We are in a global world, so when you design products and services, you better be a diverse way of thinking and designing operations and operating, thinking globally, acting locally, but with a diverse background, because if not, it's going to be very difficult. Nevertheless, getting a little bit also into the gender type of a topic too, I think one of the things, if you go into technology, that I think is the new language. I always say that technology is something that it's absolutely affects everyone, everywhere, no matter where you work, in which area, subject, segment you work. Technology is there and it's transforming the whole world. I mean, this is the big exponential world that we are living. What studies come to say is that if women, and I'm putting it into women, and of course diversity is much more, I agree, but let's put it to give it to a try, that if women would go into tech jobs, which honestly are the jobs that we are all companies are looking for tech skills. This is the new skills that are not only technical skills, but also the creativity, design thinking, etc. What are we missing that women are not there yet? What are the barriers that we are finding, especially in the tech world? I mean, today, just to give you some data, 80%, let's put it this way, 80% of the ICT jobs are done by men.
Yeah.
Only 19% of all people working in ICT are led by a woman. I mean, that means we have something to do. What do we have to do? What are the barriers? What do you think about that, I mean, statement? I'll start with you, Ansa.
Yeah.
Just to give it a try.
Yeah. So I actually think that it starts during education. That a lot of the more tech-related subjects, they're more targeted towards males, and females are often pushed more towards either more creative subjects or often things like marketing, HR, and just different or service industries. So I think it would start there. Also in terms of changing for the future, I think it has to start very early on. And then I also think another then when you get later on, when people start working and start their careers, I think a lot of the tech companies, it's a very, very male-dominated environment. And you know, I think it's great for females who are comfortable in that environment, but I've also seen that you know, a female out of university will join a tech company and then maybe get a bit scared off, and then change. So that's another.
Don't you think, I mean, I don't know if you want to add something, don't you think there is a huge opportunity? There's where the profiles are coming. That's what we are missing. More than 2 million. We are saying that, at least, for example, in a country like Spain, for 2020, we're missing tech profiles. Don't you think there is a big opportunity we can't miss?
I think personally, I think it comes at the individual level, because what we're trying to do in general is we're trying, and as a global tech companies, trying just to minimize lawsuits by complying with the diversity standards that everybody kind of like feels obliged to fit. But the reality is that individual level, we're not doing our share. And I tell you that I'm a woman, I'm a single mother, Hispanic that works in California and Silicon Valley in tech. Okay.
There's two of you, right?
Yeah. I remember one of my professors used to say, I told him I am in kind of like the 5%, and said, no, you are in the kind of the ridiculous percent. So, and it was very funny because that's what was happening. And so, but the reality is perhaps even us, mothers and educators, because we're the first educators, we're not pushing individually from home. That standard of pushing our daughters and sons to understand that you have the same capabilities for doing whatever you aim to do, and you just have to work hard. But we just have to push and encourage to get into the programs. I mean, it's very obvious. I mean, a lot of moms, they say, well, let's put it into piano, let's put it into ballet, let's put it into this and that, and we forget is why don't we put it into coding school?
I agree with all of that. My one frustration when we talk about education and early in the pipeline in these conversations is I think it passes the buck. Because there's things you can do now. And so that's true, but like you can't say, oh, yep, that's what we got to do, and then not worry about it for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's been some very good articles that came out. John Battelle wrote a great piece after the Google piece, which was saying, you know, this whole culture around idolizing the young man who has not gone to college, but who is deeply technical and skilled. There's a problem with that. There is value in going to college. There is value in working at a big company. There is value in being exposed to the social mores that those environments teach you. And to create a culture where some of these stories that have happened, you need to, there's a cultural element and there's a level of rigor and discipline that all of these companies should have, you know, whether it's private, public, VC, startup, or public company.
Absolutely. I think also sometimes it's a language problem. We don't realize the way we all use the language in a way, stereotyping things, and you know, making feel sometimes, you know, even the other day I had an experience. Somebody was saying that they were going to play rugby, and the mother was saying, but are you going to play rugby, to her daughter, and say that's a man thing? Well, for goodness sake, don't stereotype. I think sometimes we stereotype a lot. We have a lot to do from education there. Going to the entrepreneur side of the thing. I know there are much less, let's put it this way, I don't want to even give percentages. I know it changes by country and region in the world, but I mean, we could say 20% of startups are run by or started by women, especially in the tech area, and perhaps that's even high for some countries, let's put it this way. But what also studies say, those ones that are run by women long and grow faster. 63%, there is a Harvard study there. I mean, don't take percentages, but what's your thought about that one?
Sure.
Monica.
I just want to go back to your previous question, though.
Okay.
And say what you were saying was that, you know, there's a huge shortage, right? And I just wanted to comment that the filtering out or the barriers start right from the beginning, and they go step by step all along the way. So it's not just, you know, the young kids, what they're encouraged to participate in the teen years. All of a sudden, you know, being the geek, being the math whiz is not cool. You know, all of a sudden you go into robotics, at least in the US, and there's no other girls there, so I want to be with my friends, so I don't do robotics. So every step of the way, there are barriers. And so I think one of the things we need to think about when we talk about solutions, we have attempted as a society to address pieces of it along the way. But for success, you really need to look at it holistically, and we need a holistic approach to to removing barriers and creating the encouragement every step of the way. So then going back to your question about entrepreneurship, sorry, can you repeat the...
No, yeah, my point here is talk about innovation, but let's talk about entrepreneurs, because I think that's one of the things that we find, and it's a very important topic for growth in a lot of regions. There are a lot of women that they create startups, they grow it, but it's clearly a percentage much lower than men. My point here is, first, especially in the tech world, but I mean, what do we have to do? How do we incentivize? What are the main barriers women have to, create a startup in tech, but in general? But there is also studies, and I don't know, I would like to know your opinion, is women startups that are grow faster and longer of men. 63% is the Harvard study says that those ones that are led by women have that. What is your view? Is it the pragmatic approach that we have, the avoiding of risks of creating startups? What's your view about that?
No, so I think first of all, to be a woman entrepreneur, I will admit it is tough. You almost have to be, even better, even more determined, etc. Have an even better idea to be even heard. Okay, so I think that the deck it's hard. Having said that, maybe I'm not surprised of your statistic, because if you've crossed those barriers and you have now created your company, then clearly, you're in a different league, if you will. So, but what I would like to see is more people have those opportunities. Not just the fact that once you have the people who break through and create those opportunities or get those opportunities, then are obviously more successful.
Megumi, which are the main barriers, or what is when you see those projects that come along, which is the main difference you see among women and men when they bring those projects to you? Or do you see any difference? Or didn't you realize about it?
I over-index in having meetings with female entrepreneurs because I want to, but it's an active, I have to do that actively.
You have to do.
So there's a base issue of how many people are out there reaching out to us. And then, there's been lots of studies about the ability for a woman to get funding versus a man, and the type of questions you're asked. There's all these things that obviously show biases in that whole process that you've obviously been through. That's been talked about a lot.
Let me tell you something. At Plug and Play, we receive hundreds of startups a year, hundreds. We get to the thousands. And we get, unfortunately, when you speak of that percentage that you say, is you have to put things in perspective, because these are relative numbers as opposed to absolute numbers. And so even if it is 63% out of the only 10% that really go up for entrepreneurship as women, then the percentage comes back very low. What I have seen when every time that I hear the pitch of entrepreneurs, and it is a very interesting difference, and that might support your theory why they last a little bit longer. When men go and introduce themselves, they get with their credentials. I'm so-and-so, I have led 4 companies, I've done this, I've done that, da, 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 and then they say the solution that they are posing to the problem, X problem. And women tend to be a little bit more conservative and modest. And so when they come with the solution first. They said, this is what we're doing. This is very well poised, very well presented. The solution is very well studied, research, and a clear value. But then it takes me 15 to 20 minutes, perhaps to you, to get into the conversation where you have to dig. I mean, give me a little bit of your background. And then 15, 20 minutes into the conversation, which for Silicon Valley is way too much, you learn that it is a PhD in applied mathematics that has run for companies, that is an expert in cybersecurity, that it is da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so what I find in that difference is that men go fight, hunt, and kill, and they figure out if they are bleeding in the process and if they are going to survive while they are bleeding. Women is exactly the opposite. They first check they are bleeding, they wrap up the leg so that they don't bleed, and then they keep on going so that they prevent that they are going to lose their lives in the process. And that is a substantial difference. Because when you come to think of it, it's like, of course, they are very provident that they start cutting on resources, they start cutting on a number of things so that they start wrapping up all the threads such a way that your runway gets extended, and then you get to the milestones that you were supposed to meet with our investors. So I don't know what's the best, but that's what I have seen.
I think for the better world, I think probably the world needs a new style of leadership, and there's where we have an opportunity. Yeah? The world of collaboration, it's also very important, I think more and more, probably that's a new style there. As I know we have 5 minutes left, and I'm seeing the watch there, that's only killing me, I'm seeing it there. I would like to have, which is the advice would you give each of you from your experience? I would say to create a diverse culture, and we come back, how important is diversity to creativity, innovation, and differentiation in the world of today, but also specifically for women. What are we missing? What would you, today, with your experience in the different areas, what would you give them as an advice?
Can I start?
Absolutely.
I'm going to start here. And I say this because, you know, clearly I've lived the journey, and I have 2 daughters. I actually feel that going to a single-sex school, you know, just an all-girls school, was instrumental in me having opportunities for leadership and to build confidence. And then more recently, I saw my daughters. You know, in Silicon Valley, there aren't many single-sex schools, but we actually found a single-sex school that took a child who was an introvert, a wallflower, into somebody who in college was leading construction, 100 engineers on a construction project. Awesome. So I saw this in action. I would say that if I were to bring one thing for us to think about, is not only, you know, opening the doors and allowing hiring women, candidates that are proficient. But what's missing, I feel, is critical mass. To shift culture, to shift conversation, it's not enough to have one person of a certain type. You need, and even 2 maybe not good enough, you need just a little bit more so that when you as a different person, the only of a type in a room, when you say something or you see something that is different, or you see an idea that is out of the box, you don't feel, you know, you don't ask 10 times like, am I seeing something wrong here? You know, is it me?
You
right?
Don't question yourself, right?
So I think my recommendation is think about critical mass.
Now let's, short please, because I'm having them pressure.
Mentoring.
Mentoring.
Search for mentoring. I mean, everybody needs a mentor. Just go search for mentors and cross-task in multidisciplinary groups.
Gumi?
I see women hesitate when there are big life changes, right? Be it marriage, birth of children, elderly parents. You'll figure it out. It's not fun, but you'll figure it out. And you are who you are. No people change. You remain who you are with the same ambitions.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would also say, it is a lot about confidence and believing that it can be done, and that's where I also think there's a lack of role models and mentors. And then we can also see there's a cultural difference. So I come from Denmark, where, I don't know, for me it's the same if you're male or female, we have the same opportunities, but there are lots of countries where female don't have the same opportunities. So I think it's also a cultural shift that has to happen.
So with that, I know that we could stay hours talking about this one. I just want to thank you all. I think it's the moment. If I want to end with someone, and this is my personal one, I think it's lovely to talk about it. Let's do something. Let's act. So each of us can do something for us or for the future generations. So thank you very much for sharing your opinions today.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, folks.